The World Health Organization's member states give their green light to an independent evaluation of the body's handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. But as their annual assembly ends, the US president threatens to pull Washington's funding. Coronavirus precautions complicate the evacuation of millions of people across India and Bangladesh as one of the harshest cyclones in years approaches. This as the New Delhi government fights to contain the virus and growing hunger. And one short of an outright majority, a pack of MPs defect from the French president's ruling party to create a new parliamentary movement. Our international affairs editor will be giving us his take on what this shake-up means for Emmanuel Macron. Hello, I'm Thomas Waterhouse. Welcome back to the France 24 newsroom. The Director General of the World Health Organization says that his body will continue to lead the global fight against COVID-19, adding that the pandemic threatens to, quote, tear at the fabric of international cooperation. This Tuesday, the member states that make up that UN body have all approved an EU-drafted resolution which greenlights an independent probe into how the WHO has managed the pandemic. The EU has meanwhile called on the international community to throw extra weight behind the WHO after President Trump threatened to stop US funding to the organization, accusing it of being simply one of Beijing's puppets. Let's listen now to what a spokesperson from the EU Commission has been saying.
The European Union supports international cooperation and multilateral solutions in this crisis, in the pandemic crisis. I think we had the opportunity to say it several times. This is the time for solidarity. It is not the time for finger pointing or undermining multilateral cooperation.
Well, with Donald Trump threatening to pull those all-important payments, Shirley Sitbon takes a closer look now at how the WHO is currently being funded.
The World Health Organization is funded by countries, institutions, and private donors. Roughly 20% of its budget comes from flexible funds, which include contributions from member states. Roughly 80% of the organization's budget comes from voluntary contributions from either countries or private investors. The U.S. is the top donor in both sources. It pays 22% of assessed contributions. In comparison, France pays less than 5%. According to estimates, the U.S. has paid over the past decade $3.5 billion to the UN body. The World Health Organization has used the money to expand health services across the world, often to regions that lack health professionals. The organization sends out experts to evaluate risks and publishes guidelines to deal with various epidemics and health issues. Critics have said it may not be entirely independent, with powerful member states trying to influence its actions, some citing China, others the U.S. As President Donald Trump vows to suspend U.S. funding of the organization, some say this threatens health initiatives and could hamper efforts to slow down pandemics. The U.S. says it will keep investing in health, including in the search of a coronavirus vaccine, but through U.S. institutions and labs.
Next, the COVID-19 precautions rolled out across India and Bangladesh have complicated efforts to move millions of people to safety. Mammoth evacuations are underway, with one of the strongest cyclones in decades now barreling inland. Authorities in Bangladesh are racing to evacuate 2.2 million people from the path of Cyclone Amphan. The weather system is currently several hundred kilometres off the coast in the Bay of Bengal, packing winds of up to 235 kilometres an hour. Meanwhile, the number of COVID-19 infections in India has hit the 100,000 mark this Tuesday, with the government's confinement measures already extended until the end of this month. As Narendra Modi's ministers battle to curb the spread of the virus, they now have another war to win, and that's against hunger, as Claire Rush explains.
On many Indian farms, crops have ripened. Staples such as wheat and many fruits and vegetables are ready for harvest. But India's coronavirus lockdown has disrupted agricultural production. Many farmers, including Ramesh Pangal, are now facing bankruptcy. On his land a few hours from the capital, New Delhi, quarantine has exacted a severe toll.
तो ये कम से कम 600-700 क्विंटल टमाटर होगा जो यहाँ पे 3 गाड़ियाँ डाली गई यहाँ पे 3 गाड़ियाँ डाली गई ये इसलिए डाली गई मंडियों में तो बिकी नहीं सर ये जगह जगह पर कई 100-150 जगह पर ऐसे ढेर हैं अब ये टमाटर एक्चुअल में मैं आपको बताऊं बहुत बुरा हाल है ऐसी साल तो शायद ही जिंदगी में कभी आई हो
From grapes to milk, farmers across India are destroying their own products. India's lockdown, imposed in March, has upended the agricultural supply chain. Travel restrictions have made it difficult to transport goods. Markets have reduced hours and capacity, and demand has fallen. Many low-income and migrant workers in India's megacities have lost their jobs and can no longer afford to buy food.
बहुत बुरा हाल चल रहा है जैसे उधर कहीं बट्टा है मांग उनके लेके आते हैं उनको खिलाते हैं
On top of the coronavirus pandemic, experts warned that India may potentially face another public health crisis stemming from under- or malnutrition if agricultural supply chains aren't restored.
Next, 2 months of confinement here in France have left more than one purse a little emptier than usual. Households nationwide have had to spend more money on food, and the sanitary crisis has led to a rise in the number of students, single parents and the vulnerable seeking help from food banks to keep their kitchen cupboards well and truly stocked. Our colleagues at France 2 television have been to find out more.
When Freddie obtained this bakery job last fall, he thought he'd help lift his family out of poverty for good. But that was before the coronavirus pandemic.
C'est heures de nuit, heures supplémentaires, on a tout perdu quoi, pour l'instant. Combien? À peu près 30% du salaire.
His income has dropped from 1,800 to 1,300 euros per month, and this to feed a 6-person family.
C'est difficile, il faut compter jusqu'au dernier denier quoi, pour finir les mois. Et puis heureusement, on a l'aide du Secours populaire pour nous aider à la fin du mois. Si on n'arrive pas, on demande, on a le droit à un colis d'aide alimentaire d'urgence.
It's a solution the family finally turned to last week. With 3 young children and 1 teenager, it was the only way to ensure they'd have a bit of meat and fresh vegetables on the table. In Alsace or here in Normandy, lines in front of the Secours Populaire have never been so long. The widespread confinement measures and ensuing job losses have changed the faces of precarity.
C'était des étudiants, beaucoup, ou des gens qui ont perdu leur emploi, ou aussi des personnes qui, financièrement, avaient un repas en plus, par exemple le repas du midi pour leurs enfants, alors qu'à la base, ils mangent à la cantine.
That was the case for this mother, who recently turned to a food bank for the first time.
Pas le choix, j'ai 2 enfants, donc j'ai des petits revenus. C'est un coup dur au moral quand même. J'avais jamais vécu ça avant.
Before, she alternated between restaurant and festival jobs, but those industries have come to a screeching halt.
Au lieu de regagner le SMIC que je gagne 700 €. J'ai un loyer de 530 € par mois. Mon copain étant en attente d'intérim, le temps que les dossiers chômage se fassent, il y a toujours 3 semaines, 1 mois de décalage.
For the Secours Populaire, this is just the beginning of the crisis. The organization is worried about its stock running low. Should the current pattern continue, their supply will dry up by the month of July.
To some non-coronavirus news now. France's political spectrum got a new splash of colour this Tuesday. 7 lawmakers from President Macron's Republic on the Move party have crossed the floor, so to speak, to set up a new political force under the banner Ecology, Democracy, Solidarity. Their decision to quit the ranks of the ruling party now deprives the president of an outright majority in the National Assembly. Our cameras were out and filming in Paris's left bank sunshine earlier, and this is what one of those breakaway MPs told our reporters.
No, it's not a really opposition. But we need a really ecological force in the assembly. It's not a new movement. It's a political group in the assembly. I think it's necessary to underline this. And it's not an opposition force. It's a force who wants to be constructive.
Well, for more on this shake-up in the National Assembly, we can speak now to our international affairs editor, Armen Georgian, who's standing by. Armen, we heard there from just one of these Macron defectors. But what more do we know about who they are and why they've decided to step out alone from the president's ruling party?
Well, essentially, they want to nudge Macron in a more green direction. All these defectors have been emphasizing the green transition in their remarks today. You might remember a couple of years ago, Macron lost a very high-profile minister, his minister for green issues, Nicolas Hulot, who resigned because he felt essentially Macron was paying lip service to green issues, but not doing very much about them. So I think, in a sense, you could see this move today as part of that whole issue. These MPs want Macron to set aside money, 5 billion euros a year, in order to speed up the transition to a carbon neutral economy. They believe that France is at a critical turning point now. They think the government will either come up with a sort of classic centre-right economic recovery plan which targets businesses, or that the government could come up, and this is what they want, a much broader recovery plan with more social policies, with taking care of those frontline workers who've been so much on the receiving end of this coronavirus crisis, people like health workers, supermarket cashiers, delivery workers, and so forth. So they essentially want to nudge Macron to pull him in a more green and social sort of left-wing direction.
Now, Armen, one of the president's lawmakers has described these defections this Tuesday as being tantamount to treason. But just how bruising is this political development for Emmanuel Macron, who, of course, has 2 more years at the Élysée Palace?
I mean, it's obviously damaging for his image. He's trying to be a national unifier at the moment. He's telling French people that they have to stick together to overcome the virus. And here, the spectacle of his own party splitting, even though it's not a huge number of MPs at this point. Will we see other defections? Hard to say at this point. I mean, as I indicated before, these rebels are very much on the left wing of the ruling party. So if you take someone like Edouard Philippe, the Prime Minister, MPs of his ilk who are more on the right of the party, they would not see this splinter group as their natural home. So I think in the short term, we may not see a huge number of defections, but whether this becomes a dangerous move for Macron or not, I think it really depends on how bad the coming economic crisis actually ends up being, and whether Macron is still in control of events or not. In the past, when he's had to pass difficult laws, such as on the state of emergency, he could count on a few MPs from other parties to make up for dissent within his own ranks, because of course in crucial votes in the past he has had MPs from his own party abstaining in crucial votes. He looked to other parties and basically made up the difference and got those crucial votes over the line. Will he still be able to do that in the future? It really depends on the political climate, which is very hard to predict at this moment.
Armen Georgian, our international affairs editor, thank you very much. And finally, fingers have been crossed here in Paris for a very special kind of tombola. It's certainly not every day that you get the chance to win an original work by Picasso for just €100. But that's how much each ticket has cost in this high-end art raffle. The lucky ticket has been pulled out of the hat here in the capital this Wednesday. And the 1921 oil-on-canvas work titled Nature Morte, which measures just 2030 by 46 centimetres has been won. All proceeds from the draw are going to the international charity CARE, which helps to provide clean water and sanitation to schools and to villages across Africa and Asia. And that brings you up to date. Do stay with us here on France 24.